All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Dinner's going to be a little late tonight. I'm Patty Waring.
And I'm John Bailey from Two Dads with Baggage.
John, how are you doing today?
I'm hot. It's hot.
I'm sorry, because I am not hot. I am coming to you on location from Squaw Valley, and it is a beautiful, about 78 degrees today. The fire haze is gone, and it's just a gorgeous day here in Squaw Valley in Lake Tahoe, California, Squaw Valley, where the Winter Olympics were held in 1960. Before we were born, John.
I know, even before then. And I've been ice skating on that Olympic ice rink, and they still have Olympic rings frozen into the ice, which I always thought was super cool.
I love it. That's the only sport that I do better than my husband and my son is ice skating, because I grew up in San Francisco. That's the only sport we did. All right, so before we get into today, John, let's recap last week.
Last week, we made chicken saltimbocca, which is sort of our version of veal saltimbocca. And we made chicken because veal is something that we don't eat for obvious reasons. So we made beautiful chicken saltimbocca with had prosciutto and sage and this delicious white wine, butter, shallot, garlic sauce that was super good. And this week we're being thrifty because I think we're using some of that prosciutto again, right?
Yes. But before we step away from the chicken saltimbocca, I have a question for you. And then I just have a fun little anecdote, as one does. So if you've tuned in last week, you saw that I diligently took my toothpicks out of the pieces of each individual piece of the chicken saltimbocca. And I was diligent. And then that night when my husband and I sat down to have dinner, apparently I only took 3 of the 4 pieces of toothpick out, because guess who got the toothpick? Right here.
Hey, that's good luck. You can make a wish.
Oh, excellent. My wish was that I didn't tear up the roof of my mouth.
So we had these toothpicks that we used to hold the pieces of sage and the prosciutto to the chicken breast when we were cooking it. And you're supposed to take it out before you serve it. But hey.
I thought I did.
Yeah, well.
So, John, last week, one of the things you said about the chicken saltimbocca was that it's a great dish to make in advance and for company. So what's your best advice on if you do make an entree like that in advance to hold it for a couple hours?
Yeah, so I love to make that dish when we have people coming over because I really hate to sit in the kitchen and cook the whole time. When we have guests over, I'd much rather enjoy their company or eat hors d'oeuvres or drink wine or whatever we're doing together. I don't want to have my back to them and be cooking the whole time while they're all having a great time. So chicken saltimbocca is a great one to make in advance because you can put the food, you make it, put it in the refrigerator, and when you take it back out, you can just put the sauce back into the pan and warm the chicken, melt the cheese again, and it's good to go. So it's one of those dishes you can prep in advance and then serve when you're ready. So it's very, very quick when you're ready to heat it back up. Just don't put it in the microwave. It makes things very rubbery.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Warm it up in the pan.
That's awesome. All right. So, John, what are we making today?
Well, today we are making flatbread pizza with pesto sauce and prosciutto from last week and some goat cheese. And, you have to talk about it while I go get the goat cheese maker thing because Patty and I made goat cheese a couple of months ago, and it's super easy to make at home. We have a little kit, but you can do it by yourselves. It was so much fun. So why don't you talk about it, and I'll get that goat cheese thing.
All right. So we're making flatbread pizza, but we're also making our first handcrafted cocktail of our show. And we have a special guest, a very special mixologist, who is going to give us his secret recipe that is pretty famous in my world. So now you may be thinking, flatbread and margarita, where's the connection? Well, first of all, why not? Because they both are delicious. But the real connection is when I realized that we were going to get this little getaway and we were going to be out of town and we wanted to still do the show, I thought, what can I make in a condo where I don't know what I'm walking into? I don't know what kind of supplies they're going to have. And I thought, well, you can always pull together this flatbread Just you go down to the store, and the rest of the ingredients are super easy. But the cool thing about these ingredients, when we get into them, you can do it super easy, on vacation cabin style, or you can also make a lot of the ingredients yourself that we're going to talk about, and then you kind of elevate it. And it also is a great appetizer or an entree. So should we get started?
Yeah, let's get started. I want to talk about this goat cheese making kit, though, that you can get from Williams-Sonoma, but you can also order it online. There are several places that make it. And Patty and I went to the local farmer's market here in San Diego, and we got goat milk. And when we came back, we made this delicious goat cheese. And it took we slowed it down because I think we were laughing and maybe having a glass of wine or two. But it might take 20 minutes from start to finish. And then you put it in the refrigerator so it just firms up. So you can eat it the same day or even just within a couple of hours of making it. So if you're feeling really you really want to get into it, you can make the goat cheese and the pesto for this dish.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the ingredients. So John said we've got pesto, homemade or store-bought, prosciutto, leftover from last week. What we're going to do with that little bit of prosciutto left, hopefully this will help. We've got some Parmesan cheese, goat cheese, a little arugula, and a little balsamic vinaigrette. And again, if you're going the store-bought route, I love Paul Newman's. I'm going to admit it. I loved Paul Newman. I still like Paul Newman, Robert Redford, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. Hello. And of course, you know that all of Paul Newman's salad dressings, all of his products, I think 100% of profit goes back to charity. So always want to support Paul. So
I think Paul Newman had the bluest eyes of any actor I've ever seen. Like his eyes were piercingly blue. Before they made blue contact lenses, he was on it. They probably made blue contact lenses because of Paul Newman.
Okay, but let's just say Paul Newman or Robert Redford, which Cassidy?
Paul Newman.
Oh no, Robert Redford.
Nope.
Robert Redford just turned 84. Just if you want to feel really old. All right, so pizza dough. Again, you can make your own. You can go Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, you can roll it out, or again, you're on vacation, you want to keep it simple, and you go with your Pillsbury. And normally I get the thin crust Pillsbury, but they didn't have that at the Safeway in Tahoe City. So I got the classic crust. I really wanted to do the popping thing live on the show, but I was a little nervous about what this crust was going to be like, so I already did it. Let's see, John's got the groovy.
So I got the already made pizza dough from Trader Joe's. This one is the garlic and herb crust, but I made just the plain crust. And Patty, and see, this is the plain crust. So it's already like pizza dough, and you just have to blob it out of the bag and roll it, which is really super easy. But like Patty said, if you don't even want to do that, you can go even more quick.
My thing with the pizza dough that I've had to kind of perfect with this recipe, even using the store-bought, and if you're watching and you've got advice, bring it home, to just get it, I want it crispy, but I don't want it too hard. So I've had success with this. So the first thing, so we spread out our pizza dough, nice and thin, whatever kind you're using, you want it thin. And then I'm just following basically the directions on my package. We're going to pre-bake it for about 8 minutes in the oven. So into the oven it's going. I've never used this oven.
Wait, before you do that,
yes.
Remember I was asking you if you had a Silpat, and you're like, what is that?
Yes.
So this is a Silpat, and it's you put it in the bottom of a baking sheet like that, and it's like non-stick. It's made from some sort of, I don't even know what, but you get it at a cooking store. It's super like flimsy, rubbery kind of. But when you cook stuff on it, it just slides right off rather than you worrying about cookies or pizza dough sticking to the bottom of the pan. And they're like $10. I mean, they're very inexpensive. So get one.
I knew those things existed. I didn't know it had that snazzy name. All right, now I'm going to put my pizza that's just got a little pan on the cookie sheet in my oven. And I'm going to set the timer for 8 minutes. And while our dough is pre-baking, John is going to make homemade pesto.
Okay, so how many of you have made pesto at home? Because it's actually super easy and delicious to make it at home. And so I'm just going to show you how easy it is. As you know, we've talked about basil in my garden and my vegetable garden, and I grow basil and I have tons of it, like an abundance. But that's an Italian thing. We like to have a lot of basil. I put it in a lot of dishes. In fact, I keep it in a glass in my kitchen so that if I just want to tear a leaf off and flavor something with it, it's just right there and ready to go. But check it out. This basil loves being in my kitchen so much that it has rooted. And so I'm going to get to be able to plant it back into the yard and have more basil. So what do you do with all this basil? So this is all the basil leaves, and you get about 3 cups of basil. And I'm going to put it in the blender. You can use your Cuisinart or your blender, whichever is easier for you. So it's a half a cup of oil.
Yum.
And I'm putting, it calls for, my mom's recipe calls for 3 cloves of garlic, but more is more. And so I'm putting 4 cloves of garlic because I like garlic. So I'm putting that in. And then you put in a half a cup of pine nuts. And sometimes it calls for you to roast the pine nuts and sometimes not. I'm not. But my friend Susan is having insane basil this year. So Susan and I are making pesto together, I'm sure. Right, Susan? I'm now putting half a cup of Parmesan cheese and a little salt and pepper just to give it some, extra flavor. And then the basil leaves. And that's it, you guys. I mean, that is the easiest recipe ever. So I just put the basil in to the thing, and this is going to be really loud, so I'm just going to do it for a second. But I just want to show you how easy it comes together. So you just let it do its thing. It usually takes a couple minutes, but you end up with this beautiful, bright green, delicious pesto that goes so well on so many things. I could just put it on pasta noodles and I'm ready to go with a little extra Parmesan cheese on top, or drizzle it on tomatoes with mozzarella cheese. Or pesto because it goes on a lot of things. It's so delicious. Okay, so it came together really fast, and that's the thing about pesto. You're like, you have it and you're ready to go. So, and it tastes like so fresh. It's the best when you do it that way.
Or maybe it's not fresh. Maybe you made it and you had so much left over that you needed to do something with it. So even in the desert, we can grow basil. In fact, we have a basil bush, and we're very proud of our basil bush at our house. It's our most prolific plant. And I also have it on my kitchen counter. But I tried a hack that I just thought would make sense, and I thought I read about it somewhere. And I made a ton of pesto one day, and I put it in ice cubes, in an ice cube tray, and I froze it. And it worked. So now when I have too much pesto that I can't use, I freeze it. And yes, I actually brought this pesto from the desert. It traveled 2 days driving. And doesn't it look like green tea ice cream?
That is genius. I love that idea. That's amazing.
Here it is, just defrosted after sitting on the counter for a couple of hours.
Oh, that's perfect. See, because if you don't want to use it right away and you want it to stay fresh, you end up with this giant Tupperware full of pesto in the freezer. This is a perfect idea.
Yeah.
And your friend Teresa makes cilantro instead of basil. And I love that. I have never done that before. So I want to try that. Teresa, I'm curious after this is over, if you just put all the same ingredients, but just sub cilantro for pesto.
So
and Susan's putting pesto on chicken when grilling, and that sounds really good. Love it.
Yum. So pesto, last week I talked about my very limited palate. Pesto is one of the few things I ate my entire life as a child. And also, since my birthday is St. Patrick's Day, it's green. That was always my birthday dinner because my father hated corned beef and cabbage. So it's
Who
amazing.
doesn't? Ah,
I know.
I do not like it. Do not like it.
So one step you want to take while the dough is pre-baking is we're going to take our arugula, and I just about 2 cups, and we're just going to toss it with a little bit of our balsamic vinaigrette. So that's going to be ready. We're not going to use it quite yet, but you know, when you're looking at something to do, taking place. Here we go. Just going to toss that up. Yeah, the pesto in the freezer thing is just amazing. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So one day I was making pesto. I'm mid pesto, and I realized I don't have any pine nuts, but I have pecans. And we threw in pecans instead of pine nuts. I know, sounds weird. Delicious. The sweetness of the pecan, and then also I sometimes use Romano cheese in addition to the pecan. So pesto is one of those things that you can play with. But John's mama's recipe, you know, that's the OG. That's going to be.
I've had a really delicious pistachio pesto. Say that 3 times fast. But it was also amazing, and it was so good. I think it was on lamb. I'm pretty sure it was basted on the lamb, and then made this delicious crust as the lamb cooked. So it was delicious.
That sounds amazing.
Look at how green this is. I mean, can you see that? And it smells so good.
I could live on pesto, honestly. So we've got about a minute more for our crust to pre-bake. Then we're going to grab those toppings and get rolling with that. And then after we put the pizza back in the oven, we're going to have our mixologist come on up. Here's a fun hack while I'm thinking of it. So John talked about reheating the saltimbocca. Here's a great thing that I think I made up. I could have read it somewhere. I don't know. For reheating, I started doing pizza. Really do it with any kind of leftovers. Like if you have your to-go box from a restaurant. So you take whatever your leftover is, put it on a cookie sheet, and put it in the oven. Turn the oven on to 350 with your pieces of pizza, your half a burger, whatever. And then when the oven beeps, like mine did a couple minutes ago, to say it's preheated, your pizza is perfectly reheated. Perfect.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Because I am going to serve this tonight for dinner. We have a really close friend coming over for dinner, and we're going to be socially distant on our back deck and eat this delicious pesto flatbread that I've made, but I want it to be warm. So that's perfect. Thank you. I did not know that. In all these many years, you've never shared that secret with me.
I know. Well, you're learning a couple secrets today. Oh, there's the timer. That was my timer with my, what was that?
Bad to the bone.
No, it was not The Crown, the fake one, Downton Abbey. That was
okay.
I just got to share these pot holders. I know we're staying at our friend's condo. They're not here. And I know that a small child made these many, many years ago. Do you remember these?
They look like grandma pot holders. Oh, no. Okay. All right.
I mean, I don't know if you made them, but these were big in my house. The loom pot holders. Oh, love these.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to talk about this wine that I'm drinking because Patty and I have something, and I'm drinking red wine. Scott's going to make margaritas in a minute, but right now, just until then, this is to hold me over. And I'm drinking this red wine from Hush Vineyards. And when I was telling Patty that I was going to do a wine tasting that included Hush Vineyards, which is in Mendocino County in the northern or the sort of northwestern part of Sonoma County. And there are not fires in Mendocino County right now. And I told her I was going to be tasting Hush. And what did you say, Patty?
So we love Hush. That's our go-to. That's our everyday. That's our Chardonnay. Many nights a week, we enjoy our Hush.
Okay, well, I'm drinking the Pinot Noir, and it's the Reserve from 2017. And so what they were explaining to me was that they take a couple of barrels out of the regular group, and they let them, and literally they're reserved, and that's why they call it reserve, and they put them aside and let them continue to age in their casks. And they're hand-picked to sort of age further, and so it's an even smoother and more delicious Pinot Noir from Hush, Husch, Hush Vineyards. Love it. It's like my new go-to. Love, love, love. And it's very affordable. I think it's like under $30.
Yes, we had a wine dinner, a hush wine dinner, and that's what we got turned on to it. It is. It's a very nice producer with some reasonable, and we usually do the Chardonnay, but I have had the Pinot too. All right,
it's aged in French oak barrels, and it's like, oh, delicious. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Did you take your crust out?
Yeah, mine came out before yours did.
Oh, yeah, because I was talking about
chatting it up. You were showing potholders, and I was taking but mine has big, weird bubbles in it. It's misshapen.
Poke the bubbles.
Poke them with what?
A fork.
Oh, okay.
Like pop them.
Okay.
We're gonna take the pesto, and we're just gonna spread it on the. Now, I've got to do a little disclaimer. There's a lot of ingredients on this. Well, all of them is that I just did, to taste, to my preference. I like a lot of pesto. I like a lot of toppings. There's nothing too salty for me. If you're looking at these ingredients and going, whoa, pesto and Parmesan and prosciutto, my mouth is puckering, do what looks good to you. Dial it back. If you're not as confident, if you're not sure what you want, of course, start with a little, and you can always add more. So I'm just going to spread the pesto, and it's kind of, it melts a little bit on the crust. And of course, you can go all this with your crust. I hope I defrosted.
How much am I putting? Like a lot?
I'd probably put half a cup.
Oh, I put more than that. And I'm spreading it with the back of the spoon.
Yep. And going to the edge to your crust. Got to eat your crust. Remember, what happens if you don't eat the crust?
You don't get any pudding?
You don't get curly hair.
Oh.
So clearly I
was thinking of Pink Floyd. If you don't eat the crust, you don't get any pudding. But that.
Yeah, I know that song. John, we can't go down that lane yet. We can't go down that rabbit hole.
No. Can't talk about Pink Floyd.
We can't start talking about movies.
The soundtrack of our high school years, but anyway.
No, we want people to watch. So I've just spread the pesto. I think you can see. I might have to move in here. It's got great angles for this. So I've just spread it around. It's pretty generous. Then after the pesto, I'm going to take the goat cheese. Now this is 4 ounces of goat cheese. Oh, beautiful.
Does that look good?
I can smell it. It looks amazing.
It's not as bubbly now.
Yeah. So this is 4 ounces of goat cheese. How much am I going to use? I'm going to start with about half. And John and I were talking about this before the show. So I like a lot of toppings. I don't want a lot of dead space. So I'm just, with my very official cooking terms, I'm dolloping globs of the goat cheese all over the crust, planning ahead that I'm going to put some prosciutto among them. So I'm just, this is good. Now, making the goat cheese with John was super fun. It was like a science experiment. We learned about whey, and we had to use a thermometer.
It was kind of like a science. It tested our skills, because those are not skills. Like, it was almost like chemistry.
Yes.
And that's not something that we use every day. Although basically cooking is chemistry. I mean, when you think about it, you're combining ingredients together, you're applying heat, and something happens. And they release their juices, or they chemically combine, or I don't even know. Someone who's a chemist, maybe if you're watching, explain to us. But baking in particular is chemistry, because you are combining these things to get a reaction, which is usually for the thing to grow. And if you are not careful and you do not combine the right measurements, you get a volcano out of your oven. Kind of like I Love Lucy in that episode where she was cooking the bread and she opened the oven and the bread came out and pinned her against the wall. Yeah. We made cake once, and my beloved family thought that it said 3 cups of baking soda when it said 3 teaspoons of baking soda. And this is how funny it was. They're like, it's growing in the bowl. wow, we're going to get extra cake. Let's make more pans of it, because it said it only 2 pans, but this is going to fill 4 pans because it was already bubbling in the bowl. And they put it in the oven. And I've never seen Triton move so fast. I've never seen it move so fast. It was the funniest thing. So of course, then we had to remake it, remeasure it all the right way. So the moral of that story is read carefully, because baking is chemistry.
It is. It's tricky. It's tricky. It's the only thing I can do with numbers. This and counting to 8 to dance and money. All right. So we've done the goat cheese. We've done the pesto. Now we've got the prosciutto. So usually when I make this, I have the prosciutto I buy is kind of thick. So I slice it into little strips about 1 inch wide and then cut them in half. So they're like little bite-sized pieces. And you're going to sprinkle it among the goat cheese. But the prosciutto I bought up here in Tahoe was much thinner. So I found that I'm just going to tear it apart, which actually looks aesthetically looks much more authentic. So again,
they sell prosciutto in Tahoe?
Yes.
But
There's such great restaurants and everything up here. It's so beautiful. I have not traveled like John. But I know I can say confidently that Tahoe is one of the most beautiful places on the earth. It is just lovely. And us Northern Californians, we love it. So,
Tahoe is where I learned to ski, and to ski where you are. So my 2 first ski experiences were North Star, which is very close to you, and Spa, which was way too hard for me. And they took me all the way to the top and then left me at the top of the chair. And it's like, okay, see you at the bottom. So yeah.
Who did that?
Some high school friends. I think I was 12.
Not us.
10 or 12.
I too learned at North Star. And I skied with my husband a few times, and I had a similar experience that he took me to the top of a black diamond, which is the hardest or one of the hardest levels. And I was terrified, and it was back in the early 90s. And I had on a turquoise jacket, and I, of course, had my matching turquoise mascara, and I cried turquoise tears. And I stood there, and I cried, and I cried, and I said, and I went down the moguls, and I got to the bottom, and I was like, hey, that was great. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. No,
okay, I'm done. Can I put this back in?
Almost. Now the last thing we're going to do is a sprinkle of Parmesan. And I'm loading up my prosciutto.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Well, you have a second. So now here's the thing. I have plenty of prosciutto on my pizza, but I have a little bit left. What am I going to do with it? Oh, yeah, baby. So delicious. A little bit of Parmesan. Again, just sprinkle it on there.
Okay, I'm putting it in.
I am too. Hang on, I'm coming.
How long does it cook?
It says it depends. So it kind of depends on your oven. It depends on your dough. So we're going to start with about, I'm going to say 6-7 minutes. Again, I've never used this oven before, so it's super exciting. But while it cooks, we have some.
I'm going with 6.5, just to split the difference there.
All right.
Let's get our margarita boy in here.
Let's do it. All right. So let me get this out of the way so we can introduce Margarita Boy.
And Scott is famous for these margaritas. He's been making them for as long as I can remember, and I've been enjoying them for just the same amount of time. And he has a touch, and he's going to teach us how to do this. And this is a big deal because it's kind of his special thing that everyone always says, Scott, will you please make your margaritas? So for him to be sharing it with you is a big deal. So you heard it here first, right here on Dinner's Going to Be a Little Late Tonight, the Scottarita.
All right, Scott, come on in. My favorite mixologist, my main man, my husband of almost 31 years here, Scott, and our first special guest.
Good afternoon.
All right, I need to get you some ice. So as John mentioned, the Scottarita is kind of famous among, I feel like I have prosciutto flying out of my mouth, among our family and friends. And it all started, Scott's always loved margaritas, but there was something, I must have been near you. There's something about a margarita that we didn't like, which was
People always made them too big and too big of a glass, and sweet and sour gave me massive heartburn.
And it gave me that flummy thing. Blah, blah. So Scott set out to find a substitute for sweet and sour or Rose's lime juice. And what you originally used many years ago was the frozen lime concentrate. Remember the old days when you used to like get the little frozen concentrate?
Yeah.
My mother would take the orange juice out the night before and leave it on the counter so she could make it in the morning for my dad. So we used to use that. And then we discovered
it morphed into Simply Lime Juice that's available at the grocery store, pre-mixed, very easy. You can buy a small one, large one.
All right.
You don't need much.
So Scott's going to walk you through, and I'm going to do what I do best as his wife, interject. So why this size glass? I think you just said.
Again, the big one, they put in too much mix, and I like the flavor of Reposado tequila, and it's more of a caramel tequila. So I like the taste of that. So the more mix you put in, it dilutes the taste of the caramel tequila.
And I say, why do you want all that filler? All those empty calories of all that mix when you just want to get busy with your tequila. So
Wait, Scott, why Reposado?
Blanco seemed a little bit too light, and Añejo was a little bit too heavy, although you can make margaritas with both those varieties, and it's very good. But everybody seems to like the Reposado.
And I actually researched this week, and it said that Reposado is the preferred one. You're being awfully noisy. For margaritas because how smooth it is, and I guess it's aged a little longer. John has a varietal that he.
Well, your friend Julia says hi. She's excited to see you do this.
Julia honestly has probably been waiting for like 10 years to see Scott make a Scottery.
This is my favorite brand right now. It's called Prospero, and you can buy it at Vons or in the grocery store. But they make the 3 types, and I have the Reposado. That's what I've been using for my margarita. In fact, I'm going to serve them tonight with my pesto goat cheese prosciutto pizza. So yeah, Prospero, which is kind of neat because it's a woman distiller in Mexico, and that's very unusual in the tequila industry. And why don't you guys tell us about tequila and why only certain parts of Mexico can call it tequila?
Well, I don't know all the history, but I do know that we love to go to Mazatlan. We were in Mazatlan a couple years ago. And we went to a tequila making factory, but it's actually not called tequila because there's a long history and there was a fallout. So there's only certain regions that can say that they're actually making tequila. And it was a trip because making tequila is like making wine. They had 140-year-old brick ovens that they used to cook the agave, which is the plant that tequila comes from. And we had a blast at that factory tour. And you can see pictures from that tour on Two Dads with Baggage with this recipe. Let's see, what else we're going to talk about the tequila. Oh, well, let's go back for a second.
Let's get busy.
Oh, all right. The mixologist is ready to go. So disclaimer number 2, or maybe more, our recipe does have portions, and I'm going to say the portions, but this is free pour guy. So I literally had to say to him last week, well, what are the portions? He's like, I don't know. I free pour. So talked about the tequila. And anything else you want to say? Well, we got some crazy stuff about tequila.
Well, let him do his thing.
Low bulk glass, fill it to ice. If you have an ice maker at home, crushed ice is usually the preferred because of the ice melt for it. With all the ingredients, which makes it that much more enjoyable. So here we go on the free pour. It's about 2 ounces of Reposado tequila, maybe about halfway up the glass. Then you go right into the old triple sec. Again, free pour, close to about a half inch or half ounce. And this is all to taste just like everything else. If you like one more ingredient than the other, then we have Cointreau that we go in, which is another simple liqueur.
And what flavor is Cointreau?
Everything's orange and lime. What I've noticed in the grocery store is I like smooth lime skins. They seem to give you more juice, and I leave them out during the day to warm them up, which produces more juice as well.
I always know if it's been a long day at work because the first thing Scott does when he comes home is walks in, opens the refrigerator, and takes the lime out. And I said, oh, it's a margarita night. Had a big day.
Half a lime in the quantities that we just mentioned. Nice full squeeze. If you're really bold, you could actually drink it like this and not even worry about the mix.
Or if you had a really, really bad day.
And then just for traveling purposes, we put Simply Lime into a smaller container.
If you've never used Simply Lime, it's great. A Simply Lemonade is great. The Simply Orange is great.
About another 2 ounces, just top it right off. Need a little bit of, what do we got?
Oh, I got a spoon. So this is a very simple, uncomplicated drink. So you notice there's no salt. That's not frozen. So Scott's a no salt guy. No salt Scott. But I also learned this week that the whole idea of salt on the rim goes back to when it was used to see. Okay, John's got the cool little salt thing. Very cool. But it was originally used to mask the flavor of bad tequila. How is that? Is it all right?
Delicious.
It's good stuff. I love these Margaritas. And whenever I smell it, I think, it smells like going to Mexico.
You can tinker with the quantity of ingredients. If you like more flavor of tequila, you can try different tequilas. You can make probably 600 different drinks based off of just those 4 ingredients to figure out what you like or don't like.
It's really good. That's a really good one. And then this is the other thing. Scott always says, oh, this is the best one I've ever made. This is it. And we don't.
And it just keeps getting better.
We don't do the frozen one at our house because of the brain freeze thing. But I did find a fun fact about that. So the frozen margarita machine was invented by a guy named Mariano Martinez in Dallas, Texas. And he had a restaurant, and his frozen margaritas were super popular, and his poor bartenders couldn't keep up with demand. So he went out and he tried to buy a Slurpee machine, and the Slurpee people wouldn't let him buy a machine. So he used a frozen yogurt machine. So a fun little fact. So, John, how are we doing? How's yours look? How's your pizza look?
It has a giant bubble in the middle. I need to pop it. It's not done yet, though. It's getting there.
Glasses. Can you see that? This oven steams up my glasses. Oh, I think I'm about 2 minutes out, probably. So,
I think mine's done.
is yours done?
Yeah, look.
Oh my gosh, that's gorgeous.
It is. It looks beautiful. It's crispy, and the cheese is kind of melt delicious.
All right, so now you've got your arugula. And you're just going to take the arugula that you've tossed in your balsamic vinaigrette, and you're just going to sprinkle it on the pizza and let it get all melty. If you're not going to eat it till later, you might want to do it when you reheat it.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I don't think I'm going to put it on right now because we're going to eat it for dinner. So I'm just going to reheat this. Now tell us again the reheat thing because I wasn't following.
Okay. So whatever you want to reheat, just put on a cookie sheet. Maybe use that fancy thing that John's got. Put it in the oven. Then turn the oven to 350. And then as soon as the oven reaches 350, when the preheating is done, it's warmed up. And it'll be the perfect temperature.
And then I'll put the arugula on.
Yeah, then you put the arugula on. Let me see if mine's done before we sign off.
While she's doing that, you'll end up with leftover pesto. Either you bought the pesto or you made the pesto. And tomorrow, I'm going to make pasta. And all I need to do is boil the noodles, drain them, and save a half a cup of pasta water. And Patty, what was Dorothy's secret for saving pasta water when you are draining the pasta in the sink?
This is so brilliant. My sister's so smart. She says, put the colander in the sink, then put your measuring cup in the colander. Oh, there it is again. Put the measuring cup in the colander, and then that way when you go to dump it out, you're like, oh, shoot. And you'll remember to reserve that pasta water.
So the pasta noodles are cooked. I'm saving the pasta water, and then I'm combining the pasta water and the pesto in with the noodles and just stirring and stirring until they're this delicious kind of green color and coated and creamy. And then I add some more Parmesan cheese on top, and it's dinner. So a little salad on the side, and you're good to go. So that's what I'm going to do with my leftover pesto because I just made way too much.
And here it is with the arugula on it, ready
Oh,
to
beautiful.
We're going to have a late lunch, early dinner, because we're old.
So dinner's not going to be a little late tonight?
No, there might not even be any dinner tonight. This is probably it.
So that looks great. Thank you. I've learned
you.
something new.
Thank you. All right.
So
So
what are we going to make next week?
oh, next week. Next week we're going in a different direction. We're going to make it's not really a salad. I'm not going to call it a salad. It's salmon. We'll just call it salmon with spinach and asparagus. And not the two. It's got a little Asian flair. And it's
one of the ingredients, because dinner's going to be a little late tonight, one of the ingredients is sake. So you put a little sake into the marinade, and it's going to be delicious. So tune in next week for salmon with asparagus and spinach and sake, right?
Yes, and follow us on our Dinner's a Little Late Facebook is going to be up and running. So if you search for that, please follow us. And
Pinterest, Dinner's a Little Late. And you can tune in to watch this video on 2dadswithbaggage.com. And the recipe will be live in about a half an hour on 2dadswithbaggage.com. The Scottarita recipe is already live. So if you want to make a margarita right this minute, then go to 2dadswithbaggage.com and the recipe's there for your taking. So enjoy.
Thank you. See you next week.
Okay, see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in to Dinner's Gonna Be a Little Late Tonight.